Look at these guys.
Yes. Huzzah! It's time for another installment of David Explains Things that people are gonna get mad at him for. This is more of a fiddly topic, like as fiddly as talking about paganism and this history and the context can be, but witchcraft is not complex in the sense of there is a lot to memorize and a lot to get right based on what other people are yelling at you, but a lot of people have different feelings about the correct way to approach it. And like I said in other videos, it's not about me telling you, hey, here's the checklist, and as long as you get this checklist, then you're doing things right. It's talking more about things that were not explained to me and I didn't see in articles or blog posts or even a lot of historical kind of stuff, never really directly addressed. And it is there in the history if you read enough and are exposed to enough. But the trend, at least lately, from what I've seen, is for people to pull out the one vein of something that they like, something that appeals to them, and then claim, oh, that's the correct way to call yourself a witch. That's the correct way to practice witchcraft. And it doesn't really make much sense because there are different styles and traditions of witchcraft, as many cultures as there are and ever has been. So what's the point of this video? Why would I be making a list, even as roughly as I do, talking about things that you need to know before you get comfortable with calling yourself a witch? First of all, what is it actually? And this is going to be in very umbrella terms because as many cultures as there are, as many languages as there are different nuanced terms that describe the person who's actually practicing the thing. And some people will also tell you that it's not witch, it's the word that they use. So when I say witch, it's the umbrella term of witchcraftiness, even if the term over here is technically not the same as, for example, like a traditional English witch. That's just for the sake of brevity and the ease of referring to many different things. And I was thinking I was probably going to talk a little bit more slowly than usual because I had a category urgent care migraine the other day and got stabbed in the butt, the whole 9 yards. But this is something that I care about, so I think it's removing some more of the blocks, and I can always do with more caffeine, but this had nothing to do with the migraine, I'm sure. So what is witchcraft? In the most general sense, it's the manipulation of energy toward a desired result. And I know there's some people who might have stumbled upon this video from like other algorithms and tags and stuff who might be screaming, no, that's not actually what it is. But in the most general umbrella term of what witchcraft is, it is the skill of directing energy toward your goal. It really depends on what tradition is in your background or things that appeal to you, things that work for you for what your actual practices are, what labels you use. And then there are also people who might have stumbled upon this saying, oh, that's literally a logical fallacy. The magical thinking of, if you can do yoga and take your breath and roll it down your body in certain positions, it's the same thing. And you can talk about how, no, like actually moving your body like changes energy and like throwing your weight and this, that, and the other thing. History has been around longer than you have. And I am not claiming that every single thing someone talks about as being witchcraft or magic or worked for them actually works in each and every little way. However, witches are people who participate in practices that most of the time that are based on historical precedent, and they also are meant to experiment and keep experimenting until they get the results that they want. I've heard some people say, well, magic is the science that we don't understand yet. I do think of many things like that, but I don't know if it's completely understandable, because science is something that you can reproduce and observe. So if you can't observe the effect that's happening, but you do still get the results, I don't know, that's a gray area. If you're interested in using the word witch for yourself, and you have been looking into various things, I do recommend that you go back and watch my What to Know Before You Call Yourself Pagan video, and it's not the same. However, there's many different things to learn from that, even if you have no interest in paganism, that will still help you in approaching the subject of witchcraft in a responsible way. And I'm starting to get sweaty, and I really don't like it, and I don't want to put fans onto my microphone, so I'm going to take a little break and make sure no part of the migraine comes back, and I will be with you in. So, what does that definition of magic have to do with gender at all? If you're someone who's looking into concepts of historically how magic has been defined, and what different practices are out there, what different paths you can take, what methods there are for experimentation, you might have come across people talking about, oh, this is only a women's thing, this is women's liberation, this is feminist, there is no definition that is not already pre-invested in skewing things one way or another that will tell you it's a gendered work. When you look up the definition of witch in some place that is not already invested in portraying it a certain way, it will say someone who practices witchcraft, especially a woman. But the language there is clearly, there is an emphasis on women, and because of historical events. That's not to say there are no other practices that might have more to do with gender than others, but that's once you get into more specifics of cultures and practices and initiation and appropriation, things like that. I'm doing these videos largely because I have had to do a lot of research on my own, and there are so many things out there that claim to have like checklists and easy ways of doing things. Just go buy this book, go buy this kit, go read the right articles, read the right books so you can tell all of your other friends that you read the right author names. And I like that certain things are becoming more accessible to people. There's more information, but as I'm sure many will agree, just because there's more information doesn't mean there's more accuracy. I remember when I was a teenager, there was a friend of mine I had that gifted me a necklace. It was one of my first like heavy metal, like it wasn't big, but it had like metal pieces on it, and she said she got it from the Hot Topic Goth in a Box kit. And over the years, I've been looking at the development of like accessibility of witchcraft and like metaphysical kind of offbeat spiritual practices, things for spiritual practices. There has been a definite rise in things adjacent to, the Goth in a Box kit. So to recap the first 2 points, magic is a manipulation of energy. It's practices that are meant to adjust the flow of energy toward a certain goal. There are plenty of people who have different philosophies on that, and there are plenty of people who do get results, but I don't think my ADHD meds have kicked in yet. Witchcraft is a practice, it's a skill. It's like being a baker or a librarian or a knitter or a gardener, But like so many things, it gets polarized into so many different directions. Like trying to tell someone that, oh, they can't be a baker, they're the wrong gender. Everyone's going to have their different motivations for approaching a skill, for developing it. They're going to have their own goals, their own emphasis. It's like you can be in construction, but you have a favorite type of house to build, or you can sew things, but you really, really like to make shirts. People want to label and micro-label and micro-identity everything when it's not practical, and so the emphasis is so much on how someone feels rather than the results that they get, which gives rise to things like, oh, men can't be witches, when the definition does not preclude that. Now you might be asking yourself, isn't a male witch a warlock? Ran up against this again recently, where someone was saying, well, I just really like how the name sounds and how it feels. It makes me feel good. Where how you feel is not out of the question, it's not out of the equation, but the origin of the word warlock is derogatory and doesn't actually refer specifically to men, but was most commonly used on men. It's not bad if you like some of the more sensationalized, like Hollywood-esque versions of things, but if that's what you base your actions on and your practices, that's a real problem. Anyone can look into this, anyone can figure out what practices make sense to them, anyone can do these experiments. It's not really a loud message that I see most places. There is so much emphasis on supposed divine feminine and polarizing everything and us versus them, and in case you haven't watched that last video, I come from an evangelical Christian background. A huge motivation in me doing these videos is because I see behaviors in what's supposed to be progressive open spaces for learning and developing in a personal craft of some kind that just parrot or take after behaviors I've seen in religious cults. Stuff on your bed. The question I see a lot then is, well, what is Wicca then? And I don't presume to know the absolute details of things, in that I am not Wiccan, I have never been Wiccan. However, I do still promote the idea of not simply going by the word of people who are already invested in certain practices for the sole information stream. Wicca is a religion, straight up. People who practice Wicca are not necessarily witches, but there is broad overlap because of a lot of the imagery and symbolism and lifestyle promotion that people find inside it. It lends itself very easily to a lot of things that are associated with what's considered traditional witchcraft. However, traditional witchcraft and Wicca are not the same thing. I have referenced several times before that in spiritual spaces, especially religious spaces, and if you're interested in more details on this, I definitely recommend watching the other video, which I will hopefully remember to link down in the bottom. As per my knowledge of Wicca, it engages in a lot of the similar behaviors that Wicca has a lot of the same problems as Christianity. It's different words, different terms, but it's the same structure, and I can go into that in a different video because this is about witchcraft. If you're interested in starting your own research, developing your own practices, I recommend staying away from things that brand themselves as for Wiccans. But it's also good to know what that entails, because there is a lot of bleed through from Wicca, because so many people consider that the default place to start. And as an example, if you're interested in this kind of thing, you may have already heard the term the Wheel of the Year, where it's at least 8 main holidays that are spaced generally evenly throughout the year. It's something that promotes a lifestyle that adheres to seasonal cycles, The Wheel of the Year is a Wiccan construction that essentially pulls various cultures, mostly European, as far as I know, and smooshes them all together in one big cohesive calendar. And the spacing of those holidays, they do make sense. It's good. The seasons generally flow in similar cycles most places, at least places that Wicca wanted to acknowledge, but it doesn't acknowledge that that there are calendars that you can just follow from specific places. You don't need to mishmash them all together, and thus we have the problem of correspondences and syncretism, and you do not have to practice a religion at all to practice witchcraft. There may be things you need to cope with that are attached to cultural concepts, and there may be ways to do things that are more in line with whatever beliefs you already hold, but there is no specific religious correspondence to witchcraft. Just like there is no specific gender correspondence to witchcraft. This does mean, oddly enough, there are people who call themselves Christian witches. And even if they don't, there are, as I've said multiple times, people who use the same framework but with different words, so they think that the behavior that they wouldn't accept from other people is now okay for them because they use the happy shiny words. This is why it's still very, very important to have your own reasons for doing things. Don't just bounce out and join a coven, join a temple, join a meetup group, a Discord group. I know it may be very, very tempting because of the uptick in popularity and the much easier access in a lot of spaces to tools, books, socialization. And those aren't necessarily bad things. However, people have gotten this idea that just because something is different, that means it's better. So in recap, we have, in the most general sense of the term, witchcraft is the practices that are meant to guide energy toward goals. And as many cultures as there are and have ever been, there are different ways to do that, different methods, different traditions. As for the term witch itself, it doesn't specifically mean a woman. It means especially a woman. There's emphasis on women historically, but does not preclude men. The term warlock is a derogatory term that meant betrayer or liar, someone who betrayed their coven, their group that they worked with. And witchcraft is not in itself a religion. It is a method and practice of doing something, but it doesn't mean religion, at least in the traditional sense, because there are many arguments of what religion means across all sorts of different technicalities and contexts, but in the traditional sense of deism or theism, it's not a religion. It's like, you could say music is a religion in an obtuse sense, but no, it's not a religion in the traditional sense. Be very careful about your sourcing for things, because it's not only that witchcraft has become more popular and accessible, it's that Wicca has been more and more synonymous with witchcraft, which is not true at all. Also in the vein of the word warlock and the misconceptions there, just because of Hollywood or other fiction or people just not telling the truth about things. There's a weird little crux that pops up every now and then where witches are really paranoid about saying they do not worship Satan, they don't work with Satan, they don't even believe in Satan. And I can go into this maybe in a different video where I have more time and brain space to talk about it specifically, but in the same vein of doing what you want to get away from in other groups, just calling it something else, because witchcraft is not a religion, many people will say there's no such thing as Satan. But what that goes back to is giving other religions control over your terminology, over your interpretation of things. And yes, we all need to agree on definitions of words so we can understand each other better, but what I don't hear talked about a lot is when witches say, oh, we don't actually believe in Satan, that's giving control over to another religion to say, we accept you controlling how we use that word. There are cultures all over the world that use the term spirit or ghost or demon, where it's not necessarily something evil, but it's something that will mess you up. We need to bring that mentality back here and say, oh, we call this Satan because of these reasons, but it's not the same as yours. That kind of mentality gives rise to the vapidly love and light and polarization of things even further. Like I was saying, it does not exist in magic, like saying that someone is a good or evil baker. It's not the part about being a baker that makes them a good or bad person. People want to feel in control of something, and it's black and white, or I'm a green witch, or like I'm a space witch, or are you a witch? Are you not? That's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and taper off right here, because I'm still learning how I like to make videos, how I like to outline things, the sweet spot between real versus sounding like I'm reciting an essay. That's something that I never want to come across as. There will be subsequent videos on the same topic. On the video regarding paganism, there were some comments that I would like to reply directly to in video and get more in depth in there, as I said, in that sweet spot between real and sounding like that's false dichotomy. I still want to be real, but I don't want to sound like I'm just reciting an essay, or I'm reading off of cue cards, or I'm just reading an article word for word. But I do appreciate the feedback that I've gotten on other videos of mine, even if it's something as straightforward and technical as, oh, the music is too loud, or I ramble on a bit more. If you have questions of subject matter, if you have questions on subject matter, I would be happy to talk about those. If it's something that I don't know a lot about, then it will prompt me to go looking for more information. But if it's also something that I'm going to do videos how I want to do videos, but if there's something that I don't notice, like music's too loud, and I did rectify that with the speakers that you might have seen in the False Autumn video, so hopefully everything is more aesthetically pleasing to the ear holes on this one. This is not the end of this topic, but I am trying not to make massive chunks of videos that just plop down like a cinder block in your lap. Things that you can take in bite-sized pieces, because I'm not an academic in the formal sense. I'm not a professor, but I want to relate these things to people in a very realistic way. I want us to have a conversation about it, because there are too many people who are just affronted by that idea. If you have any questions on this particular topic, I will welcome them in the comments below. And if you have any questions on the topic of paganism, I do have a different video which I will put both in a link in the caption, or whatever it's called, as well as at the end of this video. And I'll try to not keep them strictly separate, but keep them organized. And as always, if you have any other questions that I just didn't touch on at all, I will happily read them. I am, from the outset, monitoring the interactions that people have with this channel, because this is not my first internet space. But like I said, I want this to be conversational, and especially as this channel is still relatively small, I want to scale responsibly and keep it that way as long as possible. I upload at least 2 videos a month, and I stream on Monday evenings currently. So if that works out for you, I would love for you to stop by. Otherwise, I would love to show you even more through subscriptions. And there are a lot of plans that I have that it's a weird snowball effect of the more you're able to subscribe and interact and support my work, the more I'm actually able to give you. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.